afternoon, everyone. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including our near neighbors, Shiano First Nation and the South First Nation. This is our home, a place we live, learn, work, and share. Welcome to the special finance meeting of February 8th, 2024. Please be sure to have your cell phones turned off during the meeting. Committee, we have a few items to add to our agenda. Could you please add the page that is in front of you for general governance as page 12? And the paints will put under correspondence, please. Any other additions, committee? Can I have a motion to approve this? Motion by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Schuken. Public participation. The community is invited to speak at the mic, stating your name and the street for the record. When you speak at the mic, I ask that you be respectful to your presentation to our council, our staff, and any visitors that are in the gallery today. Welcome. Anyone?
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Longstaff, Pears Road. I haven't really had enough time to go over the budget with as much detail. I'm hoping to hear you guys talk about it and help us understand some of the new and added expenses. I've actually come to council to ask for no more flashing signs. I find the ones that we have in Metchosin already offensive. They are annoying at night. They are blinding. Well, because we have no streetlights, we have 6 streetlights. We don't have good lighting in these areas at night. They are downright dangerous, not to mention not very rural. I've actually sat at the Crazy Cookie House there, cool little thing we have in Metchosin, and watched cars for a while, and not once did I see a speeding car even touch their brakes. If you want people to slow down in Metchosin, you've got to get police officers out here to get them to slow down and stop. I know you guys aren't doing this, but stop paving our highways and making them so beautiful to speed on. We do have the most lovely roads, well kept by the maintenance crew, but those speed signs are just not rural and should not be in Metchosin. The school's one thing, the playground zone's another thing, but we have a school zone here that doesn't have a school, which should go away. I don't understand why that's still on Metchosin Road and William Head Road when there's no school there. But it's not on Happy Valley Road where the school is, but that's Metchosin's choice to leave those signs there. Your speed changes 3 times in less than 200 feet. Okay, that's it. Good luck on the budget.
Thank you.
Leonor Davidson, 900 Speyside Lane. I just have one thought. I wonder if you put the new sign for speed right outside Speyside Lane. I know you couldn't put it on the right-hand side because the water main is there, but you put it all under the trees, and I'm not quite sure who it's for. That's the very end of Metchosin there, but there's no sunlight. You're right under the huge trees. So it's not going to work as a solar panel whatsoever. And number 2, Vancouver just had a situation where a student had moved in 2 years earlier into a house that was a dorm for special schooling. And they started their classes and then they quit. And they've been there 2 years and they cannot evict them. So there is something to remember. November, the new ruling came in. You can't screen people as tenants. And then it came in now that you have to take the first person that applies. So this person is 2 years paying, he is paying the rent, but he isn't going to the schooling that he's supposed to go. And that is a big problem with when you rent to people now. May I ask, after 6 months of them not paying rent, what do you do with them? You cannot evict them under the new laws. So you might want to think about that before you build a building for over top of the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sawatsky, Kavir Road. I'm wondering if anybody can give an explanation as to the gross increases of legal fees over the last year and a half. It seems that they've soared, and I'm wondering why and who pushes this. Thank you.
Hi there, Kiara Kahakawela, Perry Crossroad. I'm here today speaking on behalf of the Machosen Community Association, which I'm president of. This is in regards to our request for funding. Councillor Donaldson, thank you for getting back to me with the information on the grant. Mr. Payette, I hope to be able to chat with you soon about what that grant looks like. With that in mind, there's two pieces that we're really looking at, and one is what changes we need to do to the community house to make it more accessible, and the other part is the parking lot. I would ask committee to consider including a line item. You had originally a $3,000 line item, and I think that would be sufficient for the time being in regards to looking at if we're not successful with this current grant, and maybe a buffer while we're looking for other grants. I know that there is a situation where the municipality will be eligible for more provincial grants once an accessibility feasibility study has been done, and we look forward to helping you with that. When it comes time for dealing with our parking lot and looking at making it more accessible, I think that's probably more suitable under a capital program, at which point I'll come back when you're doing that part of the budget.
Sir Anthony, Machosen Road. I just wanted to comment on something that's been talked about a bit lately in regards to volunteer firefighters and paying for training. Now, of course, it is a big expense, I'm sure, but some of the comments have sort of insinuated that because of our retention, that maybe that wouldn't be worth it. But I'm going to point out, they are volunteers, and like you're not going to get a lot of volunteers if they have to pay for things like that. And also, we don't really, like, it would be good to know why we can't retain them very long, instead of sort of guessing at it. I would guess some of that has to do with housing and not being able to stay in the community. I think a lot of people do end up moving where they can afford housing in this day and age when they're in that income bracket. And especially, yeah, just even trying to find anything out here can be difficult. Thank you.
Councillor Kaiser, December Road, regarding the housing for firefighters. I had a suite. I offered it to the fire hall. Nobody picked up on it. And it was reasonably priced, fairly big, and well laid out. So the need can't be that pressing.
Hi, Jill Armstrong, Lysandra Road. I'm noticing with concern the ever-increasing budget for the fire department, and I don't think this is sustainable. We're a small rural community with a limited tax base, and I think we absolutely have to go with, instead of just wants, we have to go with needs. And I hope if something isn't absolutely necessary, it needs to be cut out of the budget.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, Avril Yoakum, William Fall Road. Budget item for $65,000 for the fire department position. I understand fire department's got some strains with new regs, and that it's difficult for the fire chief to get all her work done. But by the same token, the district itself is facing enormous increases on things that we didn't even hear about 10 years ago, like the FOIs, bylaw enforcement, short-term rentals, climate change, and the buffer land. So I'd like to see that $65,000 removed from the fire department and maybe $30,000 be put to the district for an office assistant who could help on all the incidentals and take over the renting of the school gym. The school has nothing to do with the fire department. It shouldn't be under the job of the fire chief to be booking the gym rental. That's ludicrous, to be quite honest. So bring it back to the district, let all the school be under the district, so we've got a paper trail to one area. Thank you.
Jillian Mayer, 5410 Rocky Point Road. I just wanted to say, when we're talking about needs and wants, for me personally, and I think I'm speaking for a lot of Machosanites, and I also believe I'm speaking for a number of pod coordinators, emergency response pod coordinators for their neighborhoods, that loss of life, loss of your home that you've invested in, loss of the trees on your property and at other buildings and structures that you have, having someone at the end of the phone for a first responder if someone in your family is hurt or injured. To me, those are priorities. Those are top priorities, priorities higher than many, many other things that we might be considering as a district. Thank you.
Gary Lamb, Hackmore Drive. The question I've got with the recent leaving of the CFO, is there potentially a substantial liability that the district is going to be faced with that individual leaving?
Jennifer Burgess, Duke Road. That's exactly the question I was going to ask. I understand it is 1 year's salary that is paid for someone who was dismissed without. Actually, I would have liked a little bit of broader community notice too when we lose such an important person who for a year and a half managed both positions at a much lower income for you to pay than you currently will be paying. And so I'd really like to know where in the budget process the extra 1 year payout, buyout to Sue Lynn is going to come from. Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee. Brent Donaldson, Chalister Court. I'm just going to speak on a couple of different items here. Certainly on our street alone, which has 8 houses, there's one gentleman and his wife who've been there for 45 years. Certainly, you know, he has the ability to defer his taxes, which many folks in this community do. But certainly from a estate planning point of view, I hope he doesn't have to do that. Other members on our street, we have 3 families with all kids kind of under 10, and 15% increase in their taxation will definitely have an impact on them. Childcare, groceries, fuel, insurance, all the things that go along with running a family. As they say, nickels make dimes, dimes make quarters, quarters make dollars. Low-hanging fruit. As an example, and I'm certainly not picking on the fire department because I have spoken in the past on some suggestions and that seems to be kind of the analogy, but some low-hanging fruit would be, if there is an addition of a new firefighter there, is that station duties. And I spent 35 years in the fire service, 26 of which I was in a fire hall. Part of the duties of a firefighter are doing janitorial duties. Nobody likes cleaning toilets, that's all part of the job. And that sum is upwards of $10,000 a year. So, you know, we look at the 65,000, pick off 10, it's a little bit more palatable. Lastly, staff generated this budget. And I would hope in the future that maybe council sit down with staff and maybe let them know what their expectations are for tax increases. 15% doesn't cut it. You guys got a tough job to do if we're going to get it below double digits. When I was with my last job, I was a department head, and then that was in the mid-2000s. My boss came up to me well in advance of the budget and said, you're going to have to chop 10%. It wasn't fun, but every department in Saanich that I worked with, whether it's parks, sewers, drains, everybody had to tighten up their belt. I have the utmost respect for our unionized and volunteer staff members, so I want to make it clear I'm not focusing any of my maybe frustration on them. They do a fabulous job. Thank you.
Mayor, council, staff, citizens, Dave Saunders, 813 Pears Road. It's nice to see so many pheasant faces that I haven't seen for so long. I haven't been in the council chambers for 10 years. I don't envy the position you're in. I've been in that position myself, but it's not fun. And all I can say is that I bought my first piece of property in Metchosin when I was 16. I intended to raise my family in Metchosin and stay here for the rest of my life. I don't ever want to leave this beautiful place. However, incrementally, the more we add to the Metchosin budget, my kids won't be able to live here, even though I own property. They can't afford to build on it right now because of the cost of living and cost houses. We need to do something different in Metchosin to satisfy our tax concerns, otherwise we're going to lose Metchosin, the rural nature of it. I don't want to see it develop. I don't think anybody in the audience wants to see it develop. However, we need to figure out a different mechanism, and that involves your community. To see this many faces from the past is nice, but I think they're here for concern. To see the Muse have a concern about the budget, and the way it was worded in the budget concerns me. When they start to look at development, you know something's pretty serious in Metchosin. We have the CRD $2 billion water management plan coming up. I hope that you gain your experience on that. I have a lot of experience in it. I can talk about it. I was part of the Leech River watershed CRD director when we acquired that as well. And then you have the $85 million affordable housing referendum, or it's not a referendum, it's an APP process, which should not take place. So those are incremental budget items that we can control here in Metchosin. And I would like to advocate that you sharpen your pencils as best you can and involve the community to figure out a different business plan, because it's not working at this point. And again, I don't envy your job. Thank you. And credit to our fire department, credit to our maintenance department. They've done a wonderful job, and I'll support them any way I can. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Back again, Kiara Kahakawila, Perry Crossroad, and this time I'm speaking as a resident and taxpayer. I've heard from several community members, and our community is upset at the departure of CFO Sulin Tarnowski and how it was handled. The perception out there is not a good one, and perception becomes reality regardless of what the reality is, and it's something that each council has to face. I have a couple of questions regarding that. Some of them have already been asked today. One of them is, what is the decision costing taxpayers with her departure? At least 3 members of this council strongly indicated that they felt the district required a separate CFO from the CAO position. And yet now, after 1 year, 1 month, congratulations on being here, that position is now combined again with Mr. Payette being listed as the new CFO. Regarding the budget itself, I've got a couple of questions and comments. I'm concerned about the normalization of the high spending pattern that this council is forming. Over time, it will be difficult to rein it back, and the pattern is forming, which means it'll be sort of, as you go ahead, you'll just be looking at adding on top of the current budget that's already been added on. Our residents cannot afford a second year of a double-digit tax increase, let alone several more after this tax increase. Please don't forget, at some point, the police reserves that previous councils have built up will soon be gone, and the full brunt of the policing costs will become part of the annual tax increases. Frills such as conferences, appreciation events, and newsletters should perhaps be struck from this budget. A couple of points in regards to certain items on the budget I'll bring forward. General government, legislative services. What was $38,000 in 2023 spent on for training and conferences? Why was Council Other spent to $9,500 from its budget of $3,500? It was suggested at the last budget meeting that perhaps Metchosin should consider belonging to FCM. I would caution against that due to the membership fees and the conference costs that will add to the budget. And really, as a small municipality that is represented to FCM from UBCM, why should we pay twice for something that is geared towards larger communities? The allure of possible grants from FCM come with strings and prescribed spending in order to access these free funds. Personnel item. Administrative salaries are soaring, which, while this course is tracked for the time being, other areas of savings need to be thoroughly looked at. I support staff training and conferences, but perhaps this is a year that we need to be scaled back. Jumping 3 times from $7,000 to $21,000 is quite a significant leap on top of other soaring costs. Admin and office expenses. Actual amounts for legal fees to what was budgeted in 2023 is a scary amount, almost $25,000. But again, this is a going back to normalization with these items, as the budget proposed for 2024 is now $50,000. Software maintenance. Why is this increased to $20,000? Is it necessary? I'm sorry, but I can't remember if this question has been asked before. Administrative miscellaneous. How does this jump from $1,000 to $7,600? Facilities maintenance. How did the treatment plant get to $9,300? Have you budgeted enough for this year? The fire department administration with the new full-time position. I have yet to hear the fire department speak, the fire chief speak on this particular matter, and I would like to hear what her rationale is as to why she's bringing this forward and the rest of the increases in the budget. Having dealt with fire department budgets in the past, it's one of those ones that we carefully look at because the service is so key and we are maintaining a volunteer fire department. Transportation services. Why the jump from $15,000 to $40,000? Was another person allocated to this line item? Is last year's practice of cutting Public Works' ability to continue with community groups and grounds upkeep continuing? I would hope not. It was not well received last year by the many volunteer organizations that this negatively impacted. Cutting annual roads maintenance plans to save money will make you a penny rich and a pound poor. Proper timely maintenance saves money in the long run. As was brought up by the Public Works Chair at the previous budget meeting, this budget has already suffered significant cuts from the 2023 budget. Further cuts will see significant damage to capital infrastructure and higher taxes in short order. Planning and development services. Contract services. In 2023, the budget was $55,000. The actual was $90,000. In 2024, it's $268,000. Is that a typo? Environmental projects. Invasive species is now at $22,000, which it wasn't before. What is the plan for this? The carbon tax offset, $75,000. What is the plan for this? Or is this our way of buying our way to being environmentally friendly? At the current rate, you will be responsible for taxing rural out of Metchosin.
Wendy Mitchell of 580 Woody Beach Road. As you all know, my hearing is really bad, and I have a very strong feeling I'm in an awful lot of agreement with what Kiara just said, but I couldn't really hear everything, so let's not go overboard about that. But what I do really agree with is Avril's specific letter about the extra fire hall position. Honest to goodness, we've got to pull ourselves in, and perhaps the fire chief should start really focusing on fire matters rather than programming in the school. I think our office staff, if you need extra office staff or pay a little more hours to someone to start taking care of that would be much better, because then we would be able to see what's happening. For instance, there was a instinct was in there, and they seem to have gone, and no one knows why, and there's no paper trail. And my understanding is that there's some sort of new kitchens and bathrooms in there. Well, the toilets block up when Instinct was in there, but they're gone, And so obviously no one's using those toilets. As soon as that's rented again, that's going to be blocked up because the problem is underground. The problem is obviously with the septic fields. And so there's a lot of money and backgrounds and stuff that has to go in there. I think our fire chief does a great job looking after fires, but I don't think she's a civil engineer. And I think we should be hiring people with specific abilities for that job, and I think they should be in the office so that we all know. And yeah, my goodness, Miss Kara, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to speak this afternoon?
Jean Reimer, 4730 Marydale Road. Sorry, I'm a bit late and I didn't have an agenda. And oh, where's the mic? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Basically, I just want to say that I'm disappointed too. I know it's not an easy job, but Jennifer and Dave and Brent and Kara, most people I totally go along with. We are small in number. We don't have a large tax base. We don't want Costco and large tax base. I think we all want to live here for the same reason. I think we all have to manage our budgets at home, and unless you're different than the rest of us, I'm sure you have to make decisions that are based on what is really important, what is going to be good for your home and your household, and that's what I'd like you to think about when you think about the rest of us in Metchosin. I'm not as familiar, but I have heard a number of times about the fact that we did lose and decided we needed a new CFO. And I would like to know for sure, how much did we pay out to have that person leave when they were doing a fine job, according to almost everybody I've spoken to. And it's nothing against the new person coming in. Now that I'm hearing that that person now is doing 2 jobs as ours was, it's a little more interesting again. I'm all for the fact that we bought the school, but I want to know if we had a notice of Instinct leaving, and if there's a penalty for them not giving us more notice, if there should be some money and funds for that. Interestingly enough, I haven't spoken in front of an audience for a while, a little nervous, but I heard on the radio yesterday morning, and I didn't catch the whole thing, but it was someone speaking in terms of, and I don't even know if it was Victoria and our local railway, or if it was something in Vancouver, but they were saying, we have to get a grip and realize who we are. We are not somewhere like China or India or Japan with a huge population and a large population base. We might not get an LRT or whatever that we want right now. We need to look at perspective. And that is the same for Metchosin. We're not Vancouver or Victoria or Toronto, not that they're necessarily running their budgets any better, but 15% is just not doable, and you are going to have a fair round population. Anyway, so just to know that I am concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so before we go on, one of the outstanding questions that came up at public participation is the departure of one of our former staff, and I'd like to turn this over to Mary Lou, if you could comment, please.
Point of order, I think there's somebody just left to speak.
May I, or is it too late?
Oh, okay.
I'll keep it short. I don't have notes. I don't know if this is the right time and place, but what I'd like to just pass on certainly has short and long-term budgetary considerations. As an organization, the EPRM, whatever, we have been users of the school as far back, I guess since a year and a half ago, and then 1 year ago, a rather significant thing with Thomas Elmer Dixon, big attendance, etc. That, maybe understandable at the time, was extremely problematic, to say the least. But it brought home a couple of things.
the booking of whatever that venue turns into should come through the municipal hall. And the billing should come through the municipal hall. That is all doable within a 40-hour work week, but there's another dimension, a really, really important one. It was the morning of the big event that we had not even been certain that we could hold this well-advertised venue. And there's a question of access for private renters, especially on an ad hoc basis. There's a question of access, setup, you know, the chairs, the tables, whatever, security, putting everything away, and that could well be, and they certainly did on our case, be a role for the fire department. If you're serious about doing a short-term, ongoing, you know, thing with the public, that may or may not come to pass, but it would have been, I think there's a better split between the municipal hall and somebody during the time of the actual event, because we do not have those resources with all the members and whatever to bailed us out literally at the last minute that the firefighters stepped into. So just something to think about. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Lou.
Sue Tarnowski and the district have agreed that Ms. Tarnowski will leave to pursue other ventures. Ms. Tarnowski appreciated her time at the district, and the district wishes her well with her future endeavors. Increase related to...
Speak up. We need the mic.
You can hear me?
No.
Okay, so Sue and Tarnowski and the district have agreed that Ms. Tarnowski will leave to pursue other ventures. Ms. Tarnowski appreciated her time at the district, and the district wishes her well with her future endeavors. This is a personnel matter in which council is not able to discuss.
Okay, so on to reports. We have a staff report on page 3, and at this point I will turn the reporting over to CIO Mr. Bob Hyatt.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Chair of the Finance Committee, and for everybody. What I can do is go through 1 to 9 quickly, and then I wouldn't mind going through the budget items in the spreadsheet a little bit. I've had a chance to have a review today, and make some amendments. So, number 1, the staff make a note for $25,000 for road safety projects to come out of the gas tax fund. So that is noted and amended. And the staff made a note of the $3,000 the resident spoke about. So when I do go through the spreadsheet, the $3,000, we'll just make a note that that's annotated at council wishes. So we'll just put that on the, just park that for a couple of minutes. So the $172,000 for housing initiatives, I was able to work through that item, and I have made changes in the budget, the operating budget, to address the grant that we received and what we can use it for. The doggy doo collection has been removed from the operating budget, and if council would like to speak to that when we get to that section, we can. The fire department new position is something we'd like to focus on in the operating budget review. And deployment policy and expenses, that I can work on a little bit in the future when I have a bit more time. and understanding. The allocation of $10,000 for public works storm drainage was removed. Staff training, I was able to meet with all of the staff individually and confirm our training budget. So that I will talk about in the operating balance sheet a little bit. And IT ransomware protection, I have not had time to get into that, but I have had experience with a nasty attack in my career on our database, and it is not very pleasant. So I'll be doing some research on that for the district here, and we'll probably look at that as a non-budgeted item in the future. The Weir Beach Stairs item, maybe just a quick update. I am working away on that project, and there's a budget amount in the operating budget which I'd like to retain and get the stairs back in place to the residents' wishes. And just on timing, probably looking at maybe April to get that kind of project done. And new inflationary, I was able to draft up or do up a little bit of a report for council. You may have had a chance to read that. And the CPI for 2023 average, I think, was 3.5, I believe. In December was 3.7. And the CPI release for January comes out, for January actually comes out February 20th. So we won't know till then, but it's anticipated to be a 3.4% increase on average. And if anybody's interested in what CPI actually means, I can just email me, I can send you the information. Okay. And so I thought we could probably go right to page 11 of 47.
Mr. Parrott, did you want to address anything on page 7, as these are the increases we're faced this year, or do you want to go right to the spreadsheets?
Well, I believe page 7 and 8, we deliberated on at the previous council, our committee meeting, and unless council saw anything in addition to review, we had reviewed it pretty thoroughly. But,
correct. There's a couple of the items that came up at public participation under the fire department.
Right, and we're going to cover that in the operating.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so for general governance, page 12. Is that where you'd like to start?
11, 12, general governance. So, okay, general government, so revenue is, looks tight and accurate. Expenditures, under legislative services, training and conferences, I believe that is accurate at $15,000, based on my review with who needs what this year. So that would be consistent. Community promotion, 2740. We can take that down to 3.5. And council other, I believe we can go just based on averaging. 7,000 is a little high, so that can go to 6.5. So my analysis of budgets is based on historical data, plus the projection of the prior year, which would be 2023 projection in this case, and the CIP, and just common sense on what really is out there on the street and what we're doing. Under personnel, staff training and conferences, we're able to reduce that amount to 15,000 based on my individual conversations with staff and their requirement for training. today. Further down under advertisement, we can go with 1,500 instead of 2,000. Legal fees, we can take that to 45,000 instead of 50,000, based on historical data and discussions today. And projections for the 2 year of what we anticipate. Insurance deductible, $22.75. So 10,000, we can take that to 5,000. Again, if you look at the averages for this year and understanding our information to date, so 10,000 was a little bit high there. And contracted services, FOIP, 23,000 instead of 25,000, based on our current knowledge. And flipping the page over to general government, facility maintenance, janitorial services. Instead of 18,000, we should have 15,000. And so, obviously there is cost implications with inflation and, just the general cost of things at Canadian Tire. Everybody can appreciate that. Everything has gone up so much, but I took the averages and then looked at 18,000 and then did a medium amount there. So 15,000 would be appropriate. So that is it for that page. Everything else looked tight and correct to me. Page 13.
Excuse me, Mr. Pratt, we have a question from the committee.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, Councillor Johnson, will we go through all of this and then come back and talk about these items, or is the intention that we, or what's the process for today? Maybe I'm just asking. I'm not quite clear on what we're up to here.
Yeah, so I'm just...
So can we turn it the page by page back to the committee?
Yeah, page by page would be great.
Okay, so committee, anything that you'd like to comment on that particular department? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I had trouble at the very beginning there. I wonder if Mr. Pyatt might start over again at the top. I didn't get the, there was something, I think on the first page you were starting at 15,000 for training and conferences for council.
Yeah.
And was there something above that? I'm not sure.
No, sir. It's just, I just left that the same.
So that's that one. What's the $19,990 spent in year 2023? Are those the 2 counseling sessions we had for council?
The training and conferences was to do with ABIC and UBCM, I believe.
Okay. So that's UBCM dollars. And then what was the next one? You said memberships, was it? Or what? There's a few there.
Memberships was community promotions, reduced 500.
What is community promotions?
Anything to do with council's interests in advertising on our copy of policy or events or whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that catches me up to where I just missed the first few ones there.
Okay, I did start out pretty quick because I was
That's okay.
getting excited there.
That's
I'll slow
okay.
down a bit.
That's all right. We'll box through this step by step. Councillor Chicken.
So Councillor Donaldson, through you to Mr. Pyatt.
Yes.
So Mr. Pyatt, I think what you've done is you've gone through the operating budget. Sorry, I'm just repeating what you've said.
Yeah.
You've looked at with an eye to where we can reduce the budget based on averages, and also I think you factored in CPI and, as you say, common sense.
Yeah.
So what I think you're reviewing now are reductions all the way through based on what we've got in front of us.
Yeah, there could be some additions too.
Okay.
So
Wonderful.
just giving everybody my thoughts.
Okay. And it sounds like some of the amounts are pretty small.
Yeah.
But it sounds from what you're doing, they're going to add up.
They'll add up,
Yeah.
and I just want to tighten things up a little bit. And just instead of just adding 3-4% based on inflation, just to give it a reality check.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Chicken.
Sorry, just in that vein, a reality check from our staff or
Yeah.
from where?
Yeah, met with staff in each of the departments and went over the line items.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, Kim? Councillor.
I had a couple. One is the under the on the next page, under the fire building replacement review. We talked about this quite a bit, but it's down at $50,000, and we did get a $10,000 grant for that, as well as it was decided that it could legitimately come out of the Growing Communities Fund, which actually should be quite a bit. Have quite a bit extra money there from the original because it's been sitting there collecting interest, even though it's not much interest, but it would be quite a substantial amount on more than $2 million. So I just wonder why amounts like that can come out of the Growing Communities Fund still need to be in the budget.
Where are you?
Right.
I'm on the
What page?
under general government. I guess it would be 13, 7034.
Yeah, right in the middle of that page.
Okay.
And then the other question was the crossing guards, why it's not in the budget for this year. And it's my understanding it was a 2-year contract.
I believe those were one time, not one time, it was in the one times, but it was a 2-year, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it does show up, I think, a bit later.
All right, thanks.
Good questions, thank you. Okay, on to page 13.
Excuse me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe we could get the answer to the questions?
Well, the what?
The Growing Communities Fund and the 50,000,
Yeah.
and some of the other items that could be allocated to the Growing Communities Fund. There's another one further on that I want to ask about too, but for that was a start.
Thank you. We will be talking a little bit about the Growing Communities Fund on the agenda today too.
Yeah.
So we'll be
Yeah,
earmark that.
one.
Councillor Gray.
I think it'd be helpful for everyone to understand why a number is in the budget when it's going to be covered by a grant. I think that was the question.
Yes, please.
Well, I believe that those are place setters, just for, people's knowledge that they're one-time items. And that we will have a process of reviewing those after we've done the operating budget. These are kind of reminding the public that these items are, to be addressed yet, but they don't show in the budget purposely because they're not operating.
Correct.
They're grant related or funded related in some other format. Okay.
Councillor Gray.
I just might add that, Councillor, what we'll see happening here is that all the money we want to spend this year will be somewhere in the budget, even when we have an offsetting grant. So we'll come on some operating budget numbers shortly. In fact, I think we may have gone through some of these, where we'll have them here, and then there'll be a grant somewhere else that will pay for it. But they need to be in the budget in order that the CEO has the authority to spend the money, even when he finds the money from a different source than the tax base.
Okay. Moving along then.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so,
Are we?
on that fire department?
Yeah, so are we going to go through the first page then, the general government page?
We just did those,
All done.
both pages.
I thought you were asking council to go through it. So, are we going to go through it?
I asked the input. Did you have some more you want to say?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're looking on that page there. I guess the first one up would be the, for me, is the FOI contract money. We have $15,000 down here. I would like to get some information from staff just to understand over the years what's happened here with FOI. It's down to number 2701. And I think it's accurate to say that in 2021, there was a zero cost here. In other words, the FOI requests were covered by staff. Then 2022, we spent $24,000 on it. And that means a few people got active in FOI. And now we're running, this year, year to date, we don't know just yet, but $22,000. So we have an active, participation. One person filed an FOI the other day, and that will cost us $10,000 to answer that single FOI. So when we look at the budget there, the idea was to take it from the proposed $25,000 down to 23, but I wonder if we might just remove it entirely and put it on as a one budget item. In other words, I would hope that by being an open and transparent council and providing people information, this might just be a blip and we'll get back to where we were a few years ago in previous councils when FOIs were a rare occurrence. I just think adding it into our budget like this, climbing every year, 10,000 last year, 25,000 this year, it's signaling, a ton of money here. I'm just not sure that's the best thing to put forward, that, we're going to keep going like this. Maybe we can try a different style of government here and return to the past where FOIs weren't so needed. 10 grand for one letter in. So if we get 3 letters in, 30 grand, we'll overcome this budget. We've got to do something different.
I just want to actually make one comment, and then Mr. Shukin, or Councillor Shukin. I did find some documents on that as well, and actually the highest application for FOIs was during COVID. So we're not as high as you think. It just happens to be that the dollar value is, and this particular one is a historical event that is being applied.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I have to take a bit of exception to Councillor Gray's approach in terms of FOI material. I don't think it's a function of how open and transparent this council could be, although I'm very much in favor of that. Looking back to the last council, though, I will confess to being party to some of the FOIs that were done, and I will have to say we the people I'm associated with, felt we had to ask for that material because of lack of transparency. But one big thing, though, is we can be as transparent as possible, but if there's third parties involved, you just, by nature of the issue, will likely have to do an FOI. You'll have to go through the FOI process. So yes, I think we should try and be as open and transparent as possible. I think we should depart from the previous council and their approach, but in some ways you will not be able to avoid some of these costs. So thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe through the chair, I'd ask Councillor Shukin, is then the reduction appropriate that the CAO's offered us here?
Yeah, I'm going to leave that in Mr. Payette's hands, but what I think is a note is that we're not going to be able to escape some of these costs simply by being, quote, transparent. So.
Next item would be the legal budget. So it was asked by the public today, where did that come from, these big numbers on the legal side, and it came from me. Last year I was arguing that we need to put a chunk of money into bylaw enforcement, and so we put money in and we put money in again through different meetings. What happened last year is we didn't spend that money because I think we discovered that enforcing bylaws is not necessarily a legal question. It's more has to do with gathering evidence. If you can build up evidence, then you can do something with it, but it's a tricky business. So this year, our previous CAO said, well, look, you've got 40 grand there in your bylaw enforcement, you're not using it. We'll come to those numbers in a minute. So I'll spread the money out. The 20 grand is put then here, 20 grand increase for general legal. But as I think our administrators pointed out, we don't really have a cost pressure there. It's a question of how many times did we ask questions of lawyers in the past year. We got quite a bit of experience. I would suggest, having heard from the public today and the concern about these high rates, that we just remove that entirely, that 20 grand. That would leave us then with a legal budget of $30,000, which is less than we spent last year. But I would argue that we don't really need it there. We didn't need it for enforcement, and I think we're kind of just moving the money. And I think we could, with a bit more discipline in our approach on legal fees, legal questions, sticking to what the motions are that we take legal fees on, that we would do much better, and we could, with some discipline, do quite well without that money.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Payette.
Thank you, Chair. So moving along, I believe that we are now at Fire Department, and I would like to say that revenue is looks consistent with what we believe is going to be true. Fire department salaries, I believe we would like to talk about that. Fire chief is here, so this might be the best time for that discussion. There are a few items below, maybe after her discussion, that we can go through as far as our discussion today together to look at her budget and maybe tighten up on her numbers.
Okay. Chief, can you come to the mic, please?
Lovely, thank you. So are you asking questions, or how would you like to?
The first line, it doesn't have a number unfortunately, but I've got someone under administration and it's the wages fund.
Okay.
It's, I don't know whose wages they are, but last year's, the year to date was 92,000 and now it's projected at 267,000.
So to be clear, for starters, what they're doing is they're combining two line items. So there was one for my payroll and there was one for the maintenance person. So that is being combined.
Okay.
That's part of the reason for the big jump.
Okay.
Okay, we're not getting this huge pay raise, rest assured. The other piece is the addition of an FTE. And that is, I understand, an enormous impact and question. So I'd like to offer some clarity if that's what our hope is.
Please.
So for years, it has been two people, the fire chief and a maintenance person. And we have, I think since, I don't remember the exact date, I'm going to say 2012-ish, maybe earlier, we started Public Works and we had up to 5 public work crews that were also firefighters. Because we have such a large area, which is roughly 70 square kilometers, we don't really have any industry here, so none of our firefighters work here during the day. So that presents a problem for call response. So many years ago, when we decided to start Public Works, the idea was that the public work guys at the time were 4 firefighters, and they would respond to calls. And that worked great. In fact, we won a provincial award for that concept. So we've been doing that for a number of years. Unfortunately, the past couple of years, for administrative decisions, has been that they were no longer hiring from the fire hall, which then significantly reduced our call responders during the day. And then the last one is now gone as well. So we still have Gord Gravel, so we still have one there. Unfortunately, being the lead there, he is often busy and unable to respond to calls. That leaves us with just 2 people and no support, no one else coming. And that presents a lot of stress for the people at the fire hall. So the idea is to be able to get another FTE there, compounding with the fact that there are additional requirements coming from the province regarding building codes, regarding fire safety, regarding the emergency program, which puts more responsibilities on me as the fire chief, more documentation, more regulations, that kind of thing. So our thought was to take the existing person, Jacob, move him into another role that would take some stuff off my plate. I do work long hours, and I would like to reduce those hours, so that would balance that out a little bit and give him those type of responsibilities. I don't have a training officer, which is going to be a requirement coming down for the fire on the fire side. Those type of things, give him those projects and bring somebody in at a lower, kind of the step 1 for the fire maintenance position. What that allows us now is to have another FTE during the day for call response. The admin piece, which is what we've been requesting, when I first started here back in 2007-8, whenever that was, that the part-time would come office staff from the district office. And respectfully, we have tried that, but up here the staff is overwhelmed and it's very difficult when they don't know the terminology. So we initially started talking, and that was what you see there in that budget, was to have an admin support. We have been able to fund a piece of admin 100% through our FireSmart grant. So our FireSmart grant gives us a FireSmart coordinator, and 20% of that I can use for additional admin support. So I've been able to try and cover that off so that the district won't see that expense at all. So it is for that FTE to have an additional person to respond to calls. And we're just really struggling with that call response daytime. I can't tell you how many times, even this morning, I'm going to a call alone because after 6 a.m., there's nobody here. And that makes it really difficult and very stressful. Does that fulfill the questions regarding the FTE?
So I have some questions about that. So when this first came up in November, the first meeting I had, November 23rd, and the question was presented to you, and I recall you saying that you just don't have the time to do the administration because of the new regs. And I went back, and because I only have what's been presented in front of me, and so I went back and looked at your reports from last year. A lot of the calls, of course, are medical, and fortunately we've, with the Bring Our Calls Back group, we were able to secure that and have, mostly because we identified the amount of training that we give our people, and so they're here, and the response time was incredibly shorter. So we're benefiting from that. So I was just wondering, from last year, we go from a request of $8,500 for admin assistant right up to $65,000 full-time, permanent, forever job, full and benefits and everything, and a QP job, so it's not like an IFFA, which is, for those in the audience, the International Firefighter Association Union. It's a much bigger union. And most of the career departments have those. I don't know if QB has firefighters, but I guess we could arrange an MOU with them, which seems to have gone by the wayside with the arrangement we had with the Public Works. I'm not sure what happened there, because that was an awesome situation for us and quite a model, and I explained it to my counterparts in Langford. We're very envious. So I was just curious how we went from 8,500 asked up to the 65,000 asked, which a lot of people are asking about today for the logistics. And then just recently we had 8 uniformed people here in the daytime sitting in the audience. So the optics are that we have people that are here able to respond, and I didn't realize we did until they showed up. So interesting to hear what you're having to say today, and then what we see. It just doesn't all kind of go together, which I think is why a lot of the public is asking questions.
No, respectfully, I mean, that's great questions. So last fall, that was at the time that they made the final decision to hire a non-firefighter for the Public Works. So it was at that point in time, administrative chose to go a different direction, and now we, as a fire department, have to compensate for it, which is why we have this request today. So if we had in fact maintained working fire crews in Public Works, then this might have been able to stay with the part-time. And in fact, I probably wouldn't even needed the admin, because I can get that through the Fire Smart. So what we're trying to do is create infrastructure here within the local fire department to be able to respond, and succession planning moving forward. So that's the difference between the 8,500 and the 65 you see now before you.
Okay, so it's been really, like people in the audience have asked lots of questions, and so and I've gone back to since the last meeting, and I've looked at some of the live stream, and Councillor Gray actually asked a couple of really good questions, and that was, the qualifications, the job descriptions, the duties, because we've gone from clerical to firefighter, and I didn't know that until actually the last meeting. I sat at this table, seems like everybody else knew, but as the chair, I didn't know we were actually having a firefighter. So as a council or a committee of finance, if we don't have the information or the reports given to us, it is really difficult to make decisions. So I feel like we're repeating ourselves each meeting. This is like, I don't know, meeting number 4 or 5 on operating. We can't get to a solid place. So I am appreciating that the CIO is going through these a little bit more detailed. So I will pass over the next comment to the questioning from Councillor Shupkin.
Can I just make one quick comment on that? I appreciate your frustration. I too have felt frustration, because I have been unable to, I have given this report to administration prior to this. Not this specific report, but the change in that goal. That has been advised, and I apologize it hasn't come to this table, but that's not my job to give it to you. So respectfully, that's a communication thing. So just so you know, we've been given it.
I'm okay with that. I would like to also say that, as I've said in the past, I'm not the author of this. And we do have, actually, for those in the audience, it was not our previous CFO that actually created this document. It was our contracted accountant, Mr. Sam Weller. So with the guise of our interim, that they worked in part for that. So this is something that we just have to sort of sift through and ask all our questions, not too well informed, so. Councillor Shu.
Oh, sorry, I don't really have a question.
Oh, okay.
Councillor.
Well, a couple of things. One is about, as I mentioned before, the deployment amount from the wildfire income. Now, in other areas in the budget, we have projected increases, for example, from the casino amounts, right? And so we don't necessarily know how much that's going to be, but yet we still put it as a projection into our budgets each year. Now, when COVID hit, all of a sudden that dried up, so we didn't have it. And so I'm looking at the wildfire income, and it's not listed as being in the budget. And I know that that's, it varies depending on some years they may not be deployed, so there may not be any income. But right now there is a considerable amount that came in from 2023 that could be used in the 2024 budget that would potentially fund, and if it's carried over for a couple of years, could actually fund that position going forward. But the other thing is that I know the chief does have a report, and I think that would be really worthwhile for us, since there's been some misconceptions about what's going on, that if the chief could would mind actually reading that report out for everyone.
Okay. I brought just some copies. It's actually just a note, really, of the different items for discussion. Do you want it actually read out?
While we're here, we might as well address it. It's always helpful to have it.
It's the items,
but it didn't come in as pink, so here we are.
Okay, if I can?
Please.
Okay. So the first one is a discussion, and it's the intent and request to bring the additional FTE, which we've kind of reviewed already, and goes over the points of the reduction of daytime responders, the escalating call volume, the increased stress on the existing responders, and a big one is the safety of responders and not having them go alone to calls, and then reallocation of duties, the shifting of duties like we kind of discussed. So that just kind of summarizes that in the notice here. One of the big ones for us is the safety for responders, which I think I will probably address when we come down to a second big ticket item that's in there under the discussion, and that's the allocation for the firefighter allowances. And our intent is to bring on 2 firefighters to sleep here at night. And the reason for that is because our duty officers for years have responded to calls alone. Police don't even go to calls alone, and they have big guns. So we're getting to the point where the calls we're going to are more and more dangerous. I was at a cardiac arrest call. I was on duty. I went alone doing compressions, and 2 people on drugs were, blocked the doorway, and I couldn't get out. And it was a good 10 minutes before Rescue 8 was able to get there. Duty officers shouldn't go alone to calls. It's just not safe anymore. So by having responders, 2 people stay there at night, they can take on additional duties, much like one of our what Brent said, helping out with things, station duties. I totally agree with that. And being able to have them there for duty shifts so that the duty officer doesn't respond to calls alone. And that's the intent of that. It is a huge safety factor. Another one, I have so many of them. I've been bitten by dogs before. There's drugs all over the place anymore. We had a physical abuse on another one. And they don't come in as weights by the RCMP, so we don't know that. So as a duty officer, I'm going alone, and I don't know what's there. And it could be 10 minutes, could be longer than that I'm alone in this particular scene, whatever it might be. 2 days ago, we did CPR. We had 2 calls CPR. Going alone when you have to do compressions, that person's life is in your hands. It's such an emotional stress. By having another person respond with you, it is safer, and it helps the safety of all the patients as well. There's just nothing good about going alone to a call. So our intent in creating that larger allowance for the firefighters is to have a 2-person crew at night, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and they go to calls. And as you can see in this note, there's other benefits to it as well for the firefighters themselves, as far as their professional development, and potentially, hopefully, will increase or decrease, increase our insurance grading so that you get a reduction on your home insurance. So that's the plan, to be able to move in that direction as well. And then it also will provide you, we were talking about, the school, if someone's there at night, they can go over and make sure it's all locked up and closed up. The school alarms or go off like crazy, so they can take care of that kind of thing as well. So they can be an additional resource to you if this is the decision that council makes to go that way. And the last piece, if I can just keep going on the memo here, is the increase for our officers. And that's really what we've done, is taking the value that you have there is $80,000, and we're reducing that to 65 and putting I think it's 12 up to the officer stipend. So right now our officers don't get paid, and they do get paid. They get paid $15. So we'd like to just give them a nice monthly stipend of $200. And that's assuming the responsibility, they handle all the training, they do go to calls. Again, we're trying to avoid them from having to go alone, that sort of thing. So.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So what is the regulation about when there's a call, how many people go on a truck? Like, when do you decide when they leave the hall, when they arrive at the hall?
Nope. So we have a policy that it's 2
4?
people. Well, it depends on the type of call.
Okay.
On an engine, it's 4 people. 2 people on engine 6, so it depends on the apparatus and what we get for that call.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for first responders call, it's always
2.
1? Okay.
2.
So when you go into a cardiac arrest, is it not, I've always understood from different emergency services personnel who I know outside of here, you would never go in alone. I always thought you went in pairs.
Well, that is ideally.
Wait till somebody comes.
No, a duty officer for years, we've always gone alone in the duty vehicle. Because we're on duty 24/7, we go to the scene and respond to what happens. The page goes off. If I'm on duty, I go directly there. I have a battalion, I go directly there. So we're getting somebody on scene as soon as possible. At the same time, the pager goes off, volunteers then go from wherever they're living, respond to the call, get in rescue aid, and we have a duty crew, so there's 2 people that are on duty, but they respond from their home. If they live next door, it's great. If they live, they live down on Stewart Road, it's going to take them a while to get here, get in the truck, and go. So if there's, depending on the call type, it'll be everybody down here, whoever can get there as fast as possible, gets in there. So
that clearly has changed. There used to be a certain distance from the hall. Right?
Yeah.
So that's changed. Are all of our volunteers living in this community?
No. We give priority to our volunteers that live in the community for sure.
And are all of our duty officers living in this community?
All but one. One bought a house outside because he couldn't afford to buy one here.
Yeah.
And he lives just outside.
Yeah, I've seen that one across from Colwood Fire Department.
Yeah. It's really great. It lives right across from the Colwood Fire Department.
Yeah, optics.
Yeah.
Committee, any questions for the chief?
Sorry.
Councillor Gray.
Well, there seemed to be some confusion there at the beginning. And in fact, the last meeting we were here, we saw the number and it was explained that this was for firefighters. So that we were informed of the last budget meeting.
Councillor Shreve.
Yeah, through you, Councillor Donaldson, to Fire Chief Dunlop and Mr. Payette as well. So thank you very much for the explanation. The news about the position of the allocation for it, was met at this table with a few questions. So thank you very much for clarifying. And actually a thank you to Mr. Payette too, because I think you're very much welcome to come and fill in about this where we didn't get that before, so appreciate it. I have to say, Phyllis, on a broader basis, I'm not opposed to funding this new position, and I did hear everyone earlier today and their concerns about the budget. I felt, since I followed politics in Metchosin, admittedly that's not that long, that we have in some ways been under-resourced. We saw that certainly last year with the hiring of a new position, and I have come to realize how important that was to bring that position on. And hats off to Councillor Gray, who spoke quite eloquently about bringing that person on. The question I think before us, though, is of course everything that Fire Chief Dunlop has said is critically important, but we also have the school as well, that I think increasingly we're coming to understand that has to be resourced to be effective. So I'm just trying to think about how we can do that. Are we going to need a position or a half position for the school to make it effective? And again, I feel like what's happened at the school, sorry not to take away, is that it has been under-resourced. So maybe instead of keeping a tenant there that would have brought us income, we lost that tenant. Speculative on my part, but I don't think we can go on without that effective resource, again, with the school. So sorry, need to bring that in. But overall, I'm supportive of the new position, just want to know where it fits within the broader picture. So.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also in favor of the full-time FTE. I'm really uncomfortable with one of our firefighters going out responding alone, especially to some of the most recent incidents that I've heard about actually from the RCMP. They should not be there alone. That's just a safety factor. And as well, if we do decide to not fund that position, then the services to our citizens are going to have to decrease. You can't have both. You can't want the level of service but not pay for it. So I'm in favor of paying for it. Yeah, that's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So what I propose is Councillor Sukin's comments about the school operations, to delineate it. Maybe I would rather discuss that in the section when we get to it,
yes,
instead of muddying it with the
right.
fire department, which some residents aptly notice that is the case. So we will delineate it, and I'll talk about it down a few pages down the road here. Okay. So just finishing up with the fire department, I had a number of adjustments to the budget that the chief and I went over today. I don't believe you need to stand there if you would like that. Thank you very much for your comments. So honorariums, as we discussed, Chief discussed, said 3,000. We'd like to take that to 12,000, but that's coming from another budget. So it's not an addition. It's not a cost addition. It's just adjusting the numbers. So it's under administration, and then about 10 down it says honorariums. Telephone, we can take that to 5,000 based on our discussion today. That we don't see that increase going to 8,000 this year. Computers, we're in good shape, so we'll leave it at 500 instead of 3,000. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. Software maintenance, again, astute resident noticed, 3,000 was a little high. Like we said, our computer and software at the fire department is in good shape, so we would leave that at 500 just in case. The training and education is required at 4,000. That's for both the fire chief and the full-time staff member there. And so that needs to stay. Office supplies, we can reduce that to 1,500. And I can talk a little bit about that in a couple of sentences here. Why? The allowance, so that's where we're pulling money from for the honorarium. So the allowance, we can take that down to 12,000 from 16. Firefighter allowance, that we can take that down to 65 from 80.
Excuse me.
And if you have questions, just hold on. We'll just get to the bottom here. Uniform and clothing, we can reduce that to 7,000. Annual recognition event, 4,500 from 6,000. And courses and seminars. So that is obviously seems like a lot, but that is we have a lot of training and a lot of volunteers. But we can reduce that 5,000 to 35,000 from 40,000. It's more in line with our history of of that expense line. And training materials and supplies from 15 to 12,000. Now that we're kind of caught up from COVID, we can be more realistic with that budget. And building and equipment maintenance, can go with 10,000 from 12,000 in the spirit of adjusting the budget based on our pressures that some residents talked about. And the kitchen, the kitchen, I've been here for a couple weeks, and I must say residents really help out a lot with kitchen supplies and helping with the firefighters and make sure they're eating properly. But there still are some items that they need overall through the year, but we can go with 1,500 instead of 3,500 there. And if you turn the page, 14 to 47, the line item for vehicle supply and maintenance. So interestingly enough, that is all of the vehicles in one line item, all of our assets, which is pretty amazing if you think about it, that we can function with that many pieces of apparatus, and maintenance is only at 15,000. There was, that blip, that 23,000. That was a big repair to Pepper, which is engine 4, if you're interested. Tanker equipment rental, that's we can leave that at 500, 2,000. Firefighter equipment, that one we need 10,000 instead of 7,000. So based on a need that we have this year with some of our equipment is dating out. So protective clothing, turnout gear, just so you know, that's all the gear that the firefighters use on every call. It seems like a lot, but that's the gear that keeps them safe and sound up there. So that line item stays at 22,000. COVID-19 funding. We would like to use more COVID funding. There's still some available, I believe, from that grant. And so that 10,000 that you see there, there's no request for expense, but I will be talking to our analyst and probably securing some more of that COVID money for proper protection, gear, face masks, and all that equipment that's vital for keeping our individuals safe. So that makes the fire department budget quite a bit tighter and maybe a little bit more reasonable for council.
Questions, Councillor Sheen?
Yeah, through you, Councillor Donaldson. Sorry, a dumb guy question. Again, hats off to all the firefighters for their deployment last year and the revenue they brought in from all those deployments. So that amount, which projected to be something like $400,000, that just goes into general revenue for use when? And how is that deployed, allocated? Do we put it into reserves or any funds?
I have some thoughts, Chair, and if the fire chief would like to supplement, that would be excellent. So depending on deployment number of people that go out, we receive a number from province, and then we bill that number, and we send out our invoices to the province for their time at the provincial rates. The members come back, and we pay their invoice up front, basically, and then the province reimburses us that amount over time. Usually we pay out first, and the province is a little bit lags a little bit, and it pays for their time and their meals and whatnot. Okay, and we also get a daily fee for the apparatus, depending on the size of the apparatus and which one we send out. There's a daily rate based on provincial.
the provincial grid, so we get that as well. So the amount that we receive back, a percentage of it goes to the firefighter who goes, and then the residual we retain in a general surplus type of reserve. Typically, that is available for equipment replacement, because obviously we're using it, wear and tear, we're going to probably use that funding to replace equipment if it gets damaged or prematurely worn out. I think the question is, why don't we put that again, like a historical amount in our operating revenue? It's a good question. Personally, I would be reluctant to put funding in an operating budget that's not, like 80% concrete, 90% concrete, that we're actually going to get the funding, because it could skew the mill rate. So philosophically and practically, I would recommend that we don't put it in the operating budget, because at the end of the year, we'll know how much we received, and if there's a surplus or deficit, council can decide at that point where to divert that surplus based on our bylaws. And so that's why you don't see it in there. I can do a little bit more research with the accountant on specifics of that amount, but that would be my response to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Anything to supplement? Nailed that one? Yeah.
I have some questions. So with the deployment, I understood all that from previous explanations, and you're quite right. A lot of the other departments, they do allocate that money that's left over to their equipment for like their big apparatus, big trucks and stuff like that, not to be relied on. I know there's concerns amongst the residents in our community. I mean, wildfires everywhere, the risk. We are in a community of heavily forested lands as well, so people are wondering why we're sending out our apparatus to other places, which is very, very supportive to those other places. But what about here? What happens when we have a fire? Our mutual aid is 12 minutes down the road, but we will not be on the top of their list. So these are things to sort of rethink as we go into the next. This is one of our biggest risks in this community is a wildfire. Climate change is not helping that. So it won't be a forever thing, I don't think. And I know there's been a lot of criticism. We got a new truck just to send it out and make money. Well, whether that's true or not is not to be even discussed at this point. It's what we're going to do with the money and how we managing our people that are our volunteers with that. I do have a question, though, that some of our staff do go out on deployment, and so when they do, are we covering their wages while they're gone?
Thanks for that question. If we send a staff member, they would be taking like bank time or vacation or whatever. They're not getting. It's not legal to double dip. That would not happen.
I ask because this question gets asked of me, so I want to put it out there so everybody hears. Councillor Gray.
I'm just getting the sense that Mr. Petz answered the question that was posed at the last meeting. We're going to work on it a bit more, but I think you've answered it now, which is we won't use the wildfire money towards operating. And then with regards to what you were saying, Councillor Donaldson, about continuing or not continuing, I might suggest that there are probably different opinions around the table about that, so it's something for discussion with Public Works at another time. But the opinion you put forward backs up Mr. Petz's point of view, which is that we don't put it towards operating. We don't put the money towards operating.
So I do have one more question, actually. It's more to the chief, so if you could come to the podium, please. Thank you. So we have an awesome training program. We're very well known, great reputation across the region. I hear this all the time from all different kinds of departments, personnel, and lay people as well. And so with that, we can be very proud of that. And our recruitment, we have recruitment every year. This year you reported that we have 10 in the recruiting pool. and that we also recruit with 2 other departments, so we share some of those costs. Sadly, our retention is only maybe 2 years turnaround.
3 to 5.
3 to 5, yeah, not like it used to be. And so a lot of them are going on into emergency service type jobs, I believe.
So if I
or
can.
moving out.
Yeah, more of the latter.
Okay, so I brought it up at the last meeting. Unfortunately, you had a call to go to. And I appreciate you actually made it to every one of these meetings and our council meetings. It's no wonder you're tired. But my question is it far-reaching to ask recruits to pay some of their training costs?
Yes. I think that asking volunteers to pay for their training, we would no longer get volunteers. I say that respectfully because no other fire department do you have to pay for your training. And appreciate that, we feel like a recruitment ground, but it's that's allowed us to have all the volunteers that we have. And, if we didn't offer that training, we wouldn't be getting the volunteers. And while they do, maybe 3 years and 3 to 5 years is not a long time compared to, 20, 30 years. But they also don't, there's nothing keeping them here as far as the actual community. They don't have, I know I keep saying that housing's an issue, and I know that, local people come in and say, hey, I have this house available. Unfortunately, it's also a matter of timing, right? So that's also an issue. The people that leave either, like I don't even know how to explain it. We have a lot that leave because this is no longer for them. Family pressures the time, because it is time consuming, or they move out of district for work or for family, or just because they can't find a place here to rent that's adequate. We've had injuries that have left. 2 is a bit shy. Most of our guys now are all on the 3 to 5 to 6 year, and then we've got a few that are, just getting on 10 year. So it is what it is. If we don't do training, we don't have anything else that's going to bring them here, quite frankly. And then we don't have any volunteers, and we have no one to respond to a call. So it is a vicious circle. I appreciate that it's one of our largest expenses. I think there was a concern that I heard regarding the books and such as well. And just to be clear on that, we purchased a library, so we purchased a chunk of books, and we put Chosen on them, and we give them for training, and then we get them all back. So we have a whole library of the training, so we're not, second year gets all the benefit of having all the highlights, and I need to remember this. So we're not giving everybody a book. Unfortunately, fire service is a money-making entity. It's just the whole monster of fire service is expensive. You go buy a flashlight, it's $5. We buy a flashlight, it's $150, right? That's just the nuances of the fire service. Same with a book. A book now is upwards of $180. So it's not cheap. But we do try and keep it as, we get what we need for the crew that we have, and then, we do try to watch that for sure. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but, the training is vitally important. I don't think it's viable to start charging for it.
Okay, so that's good to know now that the residents have heard you say that.
Yep.
Then they will say, it's okay, our taxes are going up to 15%. It's $50,000 plus that we're actually putting into our training program, just so people are aware. So it is, like the chief said, it is what it is. So is it or isn't it? It's going to be up to the people in this room to sort of decide those sorts of things. So I appreciate the feedback on that for sure.
I would like to just clarify that if we don't do adequate training, then we have more injuries, and we have not safe response, and we have people that aren't qualified or certified or have the knowledge to do what they're here to do, that they're volunteering their time to do. They're coming into this town, they're volunteering to put their life at risk to go to that car fire, or to go to that medical call, or to go to that structure fire. So we're getting them for free. We're getting them for the $50,000 for training. That's what we're getting them for.
That's great.
I just want to point out that I guess through the discussions today between the fire chief and Mr. Payette, there is no increase to the training budget this year.
Correct, yeah. We brought that down.
Yeah. So it's not a cost pressure in that way.
No, my point was more that it's money out all the time for the taxpayers. I'm only asking because I get asked these questions, And if I don't pass them along, then nobody's going to know what it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move along. We're at policing. Policing is bang on, high and tight. Bylaw enforcement.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah. So the question I have about policing, I think we'll see this probably at another meeting, but the reserve, what we have here is zeroing out the reserve, and that means that we're not getting the benefit of the reserve in the sense that we wipe out this year's cost, but we do want to have some tax dollars going towards the police this year, or in a few years' time we'll hit a magnificent tax increase. So I'm expecting this to come back to us when we, in the next part of the budget, where we'll see the police, and that there will be, I can't remember, last year was a 3%, there'll be something like 3% this year, it won't zero out. Otherwise, we're not using the reserve properly. What we're trying to do here is smooth the increase, so every year we need to absorb some cost of the police into our budget. We can't make it go to zero.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that number, and that we need to add to our 15% number. But I would like to see that shortly. But it can't zero out.
Right. Okay. Bylaw enforcement.
Thank you, Chair. Bylaw enforcement, I believe is accurate. Building department is accurate. And just a reminder that there's a slight increase in salaries based on increase in duties for one employee.
Councillor Gray.
So we're just moving a bit quickly. Your bylaw enforcement, there's the bylaw legal costs. So I went back, I mean, it's pretty easy to look and see. In 2021, it was $15,000, and we spent $4,000. Imagine you did this as well, Mr. Pyatt. 2022, it was $15,000, and it was roughly $15,000 we spent. Now we've got $40,000, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't reduce that legal amount there. We have to look for places to take money from, so I propose we would knock off $10,000 from there.
Councillor Donaldson?
Yes.
I would be in favor of that pending Mr. Pyatt's initial thoughts on.
Yeah, through the chair. So I did not look at that line item. It would be based on some historical data and some current items. So let me take that back for a review, and why don't we circle that one?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, building department.
Yeah, building department, as I said, looks accurate. I did review this with our staff today.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Schicken. On building department.
Building, please.
Okay.
We had talked last year, I think it was mid last year, about updating the building bylaw and the fees that associate with all manner of building. Yeah. I wonder if that's something we might consider doing this year. When we had originally discussed it, there was the potential, it seemed to me, of increasing the fees or the revenue fairly significantly relative to what it is. So I just wonder if that's something we should invest time in. The building bylaws, I mean, it's a really quaint document. It's got the old, fonts from the 1980s or whenever it was. So, but it just speaks to how old it is. So maybe that's something for Mr. Pyatt to consider as we go.
Okay.
Yes. Emergency services.
Emergency services, just two minor adjustments. Training under management, emergency measures training. Emergency service is not a big expense overall, but we can trim $2,000 off of training, and down close to the bottom under minor capital expenses, the equipment $3,500 would be sufficient, so a little bit of savings there, based on my discussion today with the fire chief.
Yeah, I have some questions, Councillor Craig.
So I'm just wanted to point out the emergency volunteer appreciation. There's $1,000 there was not spent in 2022. It wasn't spent in 2023. And I thought we might inquire of the group. We have, in another place in the budget, added $700. I guess we're adding $700 for a concert in the summertime. And it seems to me that those might cancel themselves out if the emergency services people, I mean, I don't know if there's a future plan to use this volunteer appreciation fund, but there's the money. So we don't need to go and add another $700 in another location for that.
Okay, so thank you.
Pennies, dimes, quarters, dollars.
CAO, I have some questions on that as well. So, and maybe it's, I don't know if you can answer or the chief, but so there's a couple different line items there that weren't spent at all last year, and I'm wondering, once upon a time, emergency services was sort of a department on its own, but it's all under one umbrella now. So I'm curious to know if the emergency department head honorarium, the emergency volunteer appreciation are actually addressed under the firefighting department, because they do take care of their honorariums and their appreciation with their banquets every year and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it's all one department or if it's separate, and we didn't spend any last year, so I'm curious if maybe those are still needing to be in existence.
Okay, I'd have to defer that. If you want to answer now, maybe the fire chief can speak to it, or we can bring it back.
Sure, let's do it now while we're at it. It's almost $3,500, so I don't know if it's a separate thing or if it's all one department.
Okay, sorry, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, so what are
So
we?
emergency department heads honorarium, are they acknowledged under the fire department?
Negative on that one. I don't know why it's not shown in the budget. They each of the department heads, and that's the deputy and the department head, and that's for the emergency communications, neighborhood emergency preparedness program. I don't have a deputy in the EOC at the moment. The ESS coordinator, and what's the other one? There's one other one. Oh, search and rescue, they have their own now. So the 4 get $250. I don't know why it's not shown in there, because we did get that for 2023. And that's the department head honorarium.
Okay, and the building maintenance, I know it's a little bit different again, but building maintenance, that's just
yeah,
it's an
accounting thing? Yeah, there's nothing spent last year.
Yeah, and that's the challenge, is that like a lot of it we do, like what you're suggesting is it's like paper, we were talking about that today. The paper, I buy a box of paper and 2 reams go to the EOC, and some stay here. So I don't, whether in the future we can look at putting them all under one somehow, that might be beneficial, I don't know. But, for the volunteer appreciation, we bought jackets and t-shirts in previous years. Last year we didn't do anything specific like a gift, but I do have receipts. Again, I don't know why they're not in there. The MCOM went out for Christmas dinner. The neighborhood emergency preparedness, we had a nice dinner or not dinner, but we had a meet and greet at Glen Rosa. So we're trying to do that sort of thing. And I did suggest, I think at one point maybe for that volunteer appreciation, we do have some other funding that we can support that through Fire Smart as well. So we can
supplement.
Grant can pay for that too.
Okay, great, I appreciate that. Okay.
To the chair, I guess I was imagining if there were $1,000 there, the other purposes that we haven't got in our sheet yet is the period promise that we've talked about, and sharps containers in our facilities. If we put a couple of $500 to each of those items, that would be somewhere to put the money if we didn't do it with a volunteer appreciation.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next, transportation services. So under expenditures, consulting fees. So
Okay, so let me just get my thoughts here. So I would recommend, instead of operationalizing this project, is to look at using our gas tax or probably our gas tax. And, or I can work on an asset management grant and cover any kind of studies related to roads and highways. I can't understand why we operationalize that if we can get grants for that.
Okay.
That would be my comment for consulting fees 2321. Just from my experience, the asset management grants are fairly straightforward to attain through UCM or FCM, and they actually are wanting us to do the asset management process properly, and it really behooves us to do that for major infrastructure grant funding in the future. So the process is to get the grant, work with UBCM on the levels of asset management. So we go from level 1 to level 3 to meet the highest standard, and they will fund that with grant money. So that one I would recommend we don't use operating money.
Councillor Gray?
I wonder if somebody knows some history on this consulting fees. These have been here, I see their blanks before, but isn't this somehow integral to how we operate? I'm just not sure if it's a one-time item. Maybe you found that out today, Mr. Pyle. I'm just not clear about it. But there's a number of consulting fees here, of course.
Yeah, through the chair. So I did have a discussion with our engineer, and we were talking about this item, and I believe there was funding approved from council for over the years for reviewing the paving and maintenance of the roads, and it's sort of been a standing item. All I'm suggesting is that we have a look at getting an asset management grant for this standing item, and follow that process for a year. If it doesn't work, then we'll bring it back. But I believe this would be a good year to kind of look at that process from different lens.
So would this remain in the budget, and then we see a revenue somewhere from a grant? Like we need the services, presumably. It's just how that 36. Can't quite see it in the light here. 36,400, 38,400. It would stay there, but you're talking about finding a revenue source for it.
Yeah, that would be correct.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, point.
Councillor Shannon.
Thank you, through you, Councillor Donaldson. To Mr. Payette, so I love the idea of seeing if we can do this by way of a grant. And in terms of the accounting and trying to bring, that projected tax increase down, is the offset built in here, or can we remove this money from the operating budget outright?
Yeah, through the chair. So if we remove it, then we're relying on you getting that grant 100%.
Yes.
If council wishes to do that review regardless of the grant, we would keep it in the budget.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a risk. Our roads and infrastructure is in incredible shape. I personally believe that a year of looking at this and seeing if we can grant fund it wouldn't upset the apple cart. So it's really up to council. It's a slight risk management process. Get it done and hopefully get a grant, or hopefully get the grant and we can wait another year.
Councillor?
Yeah, I'd like to see it removed. If we can win on the grant, we didn't use it last year, and we also have added a public works supervisor this year, so there is one more body out there to keep an eye on the roads, and certainly tax-wise, it would be a nice 1% decrease.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, and I think that answers my question, Councillor. That consulting fee's been around for a while, and there you go. That's how we can resolve that one. We also have in the one-time funding $50,000 for a one-time roads and culverts management plan, and that was the other type of consulting I'm recalling. there was a desire last year that we change up, or at least have a look at, to see whether or not we should change up the way the roads are managed. Maybe you were going to talk about that later. It'll come under one time, so it's not for today's really discussion. Thanks, Councillor Abbott.
Okay.
Okay. Other than that, on that page, I think that we are good. Next page.
Councillor Donaldson? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Gray, if you had your hand up first.
Well, we've got a number of things.
Did you have something on page 23, Councillor Gray?
Is it the road safety?
It's there.
It's there. Yeah, so that one we're planning to fund through the gas tax reserve, I think. So at the next round, we'll probably see that in the revenue side, and that'll cancel out that $25,000.
And I believe that was in the initial report at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just didn't see it if it cancels out in our sheets.
Can you, I'm sorry, Chair, can you explain that road safety project to me, just so I understand?
So the road safety project is something that Councillor Epp has been requesting for a while now, and it's for things like traffic calming devices, I believe, speed humps, or
road markers,
planters, delineators, those sorts of things. I know the cost of delineators has skyrocketed since COVID. So I did notice that it was actually in the budget as starting as a line item here. So I don't think it's going to be a one-time. I think it's going to be an ongoing. Is that correct, Councillor?
Well, it's just a general, just so we had something, since we can't really estimate, what we're going to need. I mean, we certainly do need delineators, we need curbs, we need new markings, we need some new signs and things. So, it's hard to say, where Mr. Payette thinks that it might go, or if we can just take it out there and have it, put it paid one times each year, or take it out of the gas tax each year, or somewhere, and it might not be that much, but it's just something to have. So if we decide, if Public Works decides that we need to have something, we've got money there to use.
Okay, so that one would be, Chair, if I could, that item then is not project specific. It could be up discretionary, right, that amount. So
Yeah.
if council wants to reduce the budget at all, that one we could work with. There's a few items on the next page that we can talk about in association with your concern.
Yeah, and it could also, it does qualify under the Growing Communities Fund as well.
Yes.
That type of thing, transportation.
I'll just remind council, we capitalize, I believe, at $10,000. So anything below 10,000 would be operational. So if you're talking about one-off things under 10,000, that's the appropriate place to put.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Shukin, did you have a comment?
I think, Mr. Pyatt, you're going to go to the second page of transportation.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, a little bit more work on this page. So the minor capital works, again, that's only a $10,000 expense. If it's over 10,000, we would be able to capitalize that with the gas tax money, just as a note. So I think that's probably why you left it at 10, just in case. So. The new equipment maintenance, I did have a good discussion with Public Works today on all of these items. They would be comfortable with $8,000 for this year. Line item 2352, $68,000, which does sound like a lot of money for vehicle equipment. That is all of our Public Works vehicles in one line item, which is again amazing that our staff are able to maintain all those assets for that kind of money. I think hats off, however they're doing it. So that is correct at that amount. Road surface maintenance is a hefty expense, and obviously we're discussing that quite a bit this year in our budget. I had a good chat with the staff today, and they believe that $100,000 would get them through the year, vice the $145,000. So that is a nice little correction.
So is that the cracked ceiling and patch paving?
That's what it is.
Okay, thank you.
We do contract that out, but they did a whole bunch of work last year, and they would be comfortable with that amount. And then shouldering goes hand in hand with the pavement work, and so shouldering could be reduced to $30,000. We don't usually shoulder just for shouldering. It's basically done on road maintenance after the road maintenance is complete, so that could be reduced as well to $30,000. The electronic signs, I did want to speak a little bit about this because that is a new expense, that $20,000, and you know, there have been discussions about that earlier with residents, and Public Works find that they are spending quite a bit of time maintaining these signs. Bulbs, they're not, the climate isn't quite right. Every time they go and repair one of these signs, it's 2 or 3 hours to do a bulb change. And so that's what that $20,000 is for, is to cover the labor costs, because in their timesheets, they actually allocate the time to this specific item. So I would caution council on any new endeavors. Let's have a good chat before we launch out with too many more signs out there, because the cost of the sign is the tip of the iceberg, if you know what I mean. It's the maintenance that kills us. But if they're appropriate for crossings and whatnot for a safety reason, obviously, you know, that is priority. But I mean, I'm just saying, let's realize the full cost of some of these initiatives. So the next line item is $15,000 for some form of new signage. Staff believe that would be appropriate for this year, and so I would leave that there.
I have a question on that. That looks awfully low. And I know we did upgrade a lot of our signs last year, and it was an expensive line item because of the reflection. The one thing we seem to not have in stock is accessibility signs, and numerous residents keep asking for that. So could I ask if maybe we could address that?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's any other signs. It's a big dive, so I don't want to get that one lost. I mean, there's only half a dozen we need, but it never got addressed last year.
Okay, so I believe you're taking that note, and we will address that. Thank you. The snow, ice, and storm budget is hefty. So we had a really good chat about this, and this is my thought, that I would like to look at the 5-year average. I didn't have a chance to do that today as my first day in the CFO position, but I wanted to. I would like to look at this, look at the 5-year average for what we're spending, look at climate change, analyze what's going on. This year, we really only had the one, so far, the one event. And you can see that our projection is much lower than what the budget is asking for the winter next year. So I'm wondering if this could just be parked and we could have a good look at this over the next week or so and come back to council.
Okay. Councillor Gray, did you have a comment on that?
Sounds like a good idea. The one thing just to note, the storm damage, I think the previous sheet showed 20,000 budget, and this year in 2023, and this was to be 30,000. And then we commented that we'd knock that out and it would come in and be paid by reserves. But I see the numbers actually changed here to 20,000. So just eyes open when you're talking to folks. I think that's a 30,000 number in the 2024 budget.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, another point is that if I can convince, council and the public that our average is 2 or 3 events a year, and we can cost that out, and then in the case that we have a bad year and we have an additional event, that we use our contingency funding to cover that instead of operationalizing it. So let me bring that back with a bit more of a report. Okay.
So before we move on, anybody have any questions on this page?
Yes, I do. Just down to other departments, you will note line 2390, 1100, Public Works, Other Departments. We chose last year to reduce this. It was at 50,000. We chose to reduce it to 35, I believe. And at one point it was actually going to be 25, and then we found some extra room for that. Now this is the allocation that Public Works bills to in terms of supporting the grounds and some of the community groups as well. There was a lot of dismay at the fact that we cut that, and there was, now I don't know whether this actually resulted or not, but a perceived sense that we were going to lose services. So mowing and I think some of the grading around the parking lots or whatever might be dropped. I wonder if we could have another conversation with the Public Works crew to see how they felt about that and whether they did cut services to some of the groups. Some of the groups are you know, in terms of their own landscaping, they will do that, but I think some of the mowing and whatnot is yeah, there was a sense that maybe this was cut too low. So.
Through the chair, yeah, you'll see that we spent 41,000 or something in the previous year, so it was quite a bit higher.
Yeah.
And then this past year, we overspent the budget.
Okay, so I have a question, and we've discussed this numerous times, is the ditching of the culverts. They're at 50,000 this year, and in the last meeting we did talk about taking on a pilot project to look at more vegetative type ditches. And we did, the mayor and I did meet some young people from the Peninsula Streamside group that do this sort of work, and they're interested in coming and doing a presentation for us at some point in the near future. There's a big debate about it, and I won't go into the details because I'm not well versed in it, but to not dig out so much of the ditches, and then we have no place to put it, we have to haul it up to NIMO and all these sorts of things. So last year we only spent a little over $20,000 on it. I don't know if we just put it at 25,000 instead of 50,000. And so that's one of the ones that we're looking at. The other one, we've already talked about the shouldering, the mowing of the shoulders. We're back up to 40,000. We only spent about 20,000 last year. I kind of like to stay with that as well. So those are the three items there that we have debated a number of times at this table. Yes. Yes, say it, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair. So we did have a very good discussion about those line items today, and a couple of interesting notes for everybody is during the drought period, safety-wise, we cannot mow, and we cannot do the grass cutting for safety reasons, and that happened again this past summer. So that's why those amounts are lower. But and on the flip side now, we're way behind in this work, and so we're not recommending that we reduce these amounts. And actually, with the staff, we're kind of needing some more. But I just said this is not the year to get more. But for sure, we're going to be doing some catch up this summer, and hopefully the climate is appropriate as well.
Okay, the reason I bring it up is in 2022, the ditching and culverts was 20,000, and then there was a big ask for it to go up to 50,000 last year, and like you just explained, it didn't all get spent, less than half. So a big leap from 20,000 to 50,000 in that the year before we got here. The same for the shouldering. The shouldering was $4,300, and the ask last year was 60,000. And in fact, we only spent just under 20,000. The mowing of the shoulders in 2022 was almost 13,000, but the ask was 40,000, and yet we spent almost 20,000. Again, I understand what you're saying, but there was a big leap from 2022 to 2023, and that's why we looked at it closely last year and wanted to knock it down. So I'm happy with this expenditure that they had, but it was outrageously more than doubled in some cases. So that's why we're still discussing this.
Okay, so moving on to planning and environment services, is that
Yes.
good? Okay. So the planning, okay, I spent quite a bit of time on this today because we are now embarking on new legislation for Bill 44 and the other ones that are complicated, to say the least, from the province and the down, the release is quick and we're still deciphering the rules and regulations and guidebooks. But today, recall we also received a grant to help us through this year and next year. So that was very well welcome. So in that, just sort of looking through it that way, with planning legal, we anticipated that we would need more planning legal to help decipher, what we're going to need to follow through with the legislation, our bylaws and our zoning and OCP and everything else. But we can reduce that to $10,000 just based on our historical planning legal for non-housing related planning, and we can allocate 10,000 of that to that grant. And also the 2700 line, so contracted services. I'll just explain this one because it's large. It looks large to me too, believe me. So the rationale here, and I know that council has discussed this already, but I just want to get my head around it and have a talk about it, is that includes both the planner and the engineer. We're going to transition out of our current engineering contract and embark on a new one. We know that in June. So that is covered in this expense. However, the additional ask on the planning side, we're going to go 2 days a week now with the planner. A portion of that is going to be allocated to that grant, so I can actually trim this one down to, I've circled 240,000 based on my discussions with the two contractors. And we did a quick delineation of this last paycheck, and we were able to allocate a few hours already to the housing legislation grant. So based on all of that, I believe we can reduce that to 240,000, and that should get us through the year. So that's good.
If I might.
Yes, Councillor.
Just to understand this properly.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see the numbers here of let's say the planning legal is was $20,000 at the moment, and we at our last meeting we said we'll offset that $20,000 with the provincial funding. We received $172,500, so we have enough money to offset it. But I'm not understanding that we remove it from the budget. I would have thought it stays at 20,000, and then we're going to put the 172, 20,000 from it into our revenues. If we remove it here, I don't see how we're giving you authority to spend the money.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we did talk about that, and my thinking today with our finance staff is that we will allocate it to that line item, and then at the end of the year, we're going to track. The consultant's going to give us 2 invoices.
Yeah.
One for housing and one for non-housing.
Yes.
And at the end of the year, we're going to calculate the full amount, and then we're going to do the JE at the end of the year.
Right, but my point being though, we need to maintain the full amounts that you intend to spend in the budget, because it's actually the offset that's coming from somewhere else. So I didn't follow exactly. You're saying you'd allocate, of the 20, you'd allocate 10,000 to the grant and 10,000 to our current work.
Yeah.
Understood, but it still stays at $20,000, or else you don't have the authority to spend it.
Yeah, so that's a good
Yeah.
point. So let me, so my point about delineating the 10,000 is solid.
Yeah.
So for accounting purposes, I can come back and,
Yeah,
and put it in the right spot in the next.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're agreeing with where the money will come from in that, but I think it has to remain here for us to see that we're planning on spending $20,000 roughly, or whatever the number, whatever you settled on with the staff.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Okay, so that was pretty much it. There was discussion about the carbon tax offset of $75,000. So I believe that goes to a reserve. Is that correct?
Yes. So the question raised from the public was, what's that big increase? And what it is that we have this revenue coming in and that money will go to a reserve, which we set up at our last meeting. In fact, we had a vote on that. I did have questions about this page when you're ready.
Go ahead.
So there's a number of things on here. One of them is the invasive species control. So this is about rabbits. There's a $10,000, or well, it's actually $20,000. We spent $10,000 last year on rabbit control, or I think it was 10,100, something like that. And the idea was the rabbits are back, or they will be back, so let's increase it so we do more work on rabbits this year, see if we can knock them back. So I sent Mr. Pyatt a note about that, and the point I was trying to make was I think we're moving probably from an eradication circumstance to a management circumstance, and I wasn't clear whether or not we really wanted to add another $10,000. And Mr. Pyatt, I know you may not have gotten through this yet, but my question really is the contractor available? And what would his timing be? He's an expert on this. Would he come in for a week, as he did last year? He came in for 2 weeks. Then he said, now I'm leaving because I'm not catching, they shy at a certain point. I'll be back in so many weeks and then I'll go again. And he went for a shorter time. And I think we just need to get advice from the contractor because it may not be a full $10,000 increase that we're wanting to give here. So when the time comes, I just want to point out that's still one to look at. We may be able to knock that back and still provide the service we need for our community, particularly the farmers. This is a big problem for farmers right now. So there's that number may provide some opportunity to get knocked back a little bit further.
Sarah, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I do have a response through the chair that I did have a conversation with the contractor, the rabbit contractor.
Yeah.
And he's willing to come back on the same contract as last year. So we've had a text conversation. I haven't asked him about increasing his contract to this point. I wanted to confirm that he would come back and do it in the first place.
Great.
And so, yeah, rightly so, we'll have that conversation. I'll bring it back to council.
Super, thank you.
Councillor Shipkin.
Thank you very much, through you, Councillor Donaldson. I just want to go back really quickly to this question of the carbon offset increase, and there was a question that we had from a resident that's contained in the pinks, and the question was about the big increase in the carbon offset, tax offset. So again, to clarify, there is revenue coming in, local government climate action plan, which is reflected in the fact that we're putting that money into a reserve. So it does offset. There's the explanation. Thank you for flagging that. So.
Yes.
Thank you. So the revenue that comes in from this grant, in my experience in my previous position, I was able to use that money for efficiencies in making our carbon footprint lighter and better, and it included things like efficiencies in furnaces, efficiencies of lighting, efficiencies in windows, and so just for council's knowledge that funding is available for that kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Councillor, great.
Yeah, and so we haven't used that money yet on anything, so it's just gathering up, which is nice. I wanted to mention really on that tack, following up on our meeting, Mr. Pyatt, I arranging to meet with our planner about the climate plan issues. And we have a plan to talk and see whether or not, what kind of time is available to look at some of the work that we have there. And I'll come back perhaps with a number for the next budget to go in here, but it would be offset by the reserve. But I'll finish that work and come to you with, or Ms. Legation will come to you with some ideas about that. So just to bookmark that or let you know that I have continued that work on that. Now, the thing that's missing from this page, from my perspective, is the buffer land and park management. And I think we missed you, Councillor Shukin, the last meeting, or at the tail end when we got to this point. And we have a report provided from the Bufferland Working Group, which I think we should, as an action, we should get it in an agenda so the public can see it. But it looked like $20,000 to $50,000 in the first 2 years. So should there be a $20,000 item in this budget, or is that something you still want to test with council and see what we're going to do?
So through you,
Yes.
or to Councillor Gray. So when we met on November 7th to talk about the recommendations from the Bufferland, the direction from council was to ask staff to go back and do an assessment in terms of what it would look like to do, first of all, rezone to parkland, then second of all, do a park management plan consistent with the recommendations of the Bufferland Working Group. And so that was really along the lines of a protected ecological buffer. So not a multi-use trail, but just a simple pedestrian access. So the question, are we going to get to it this year? I think what we might look at doing is maybe getting some consultant help for the planner. But again, we have to get to that first question about what is this going to look like, and then what's it going to cost as well. So this is we're still in exploratory feasibility phase. So, but thank you for raising it. And yeah, in terms of how we budget that, that is a great question. I don't know if it's a one-time expense thing. Could it?
When I looked at the sheets that we got from the group, it looks like it's an ongoing cost.
It is.
And the 20,000 would be below. I think we've got $50,000, 20 to 50 for the first couple of years. Anyway, I'm just raising it. Maybe there's more thinking needs to be done. I'm not proposing we put the money in there. We have a decision to make about, I think the question asked on the working group is, do we want to resource this? And with this tax pressure we've got this year, I think the answer might be a resounding no. In which case it sets us back, but I can just imagine getting into the year and then suddenly realizing, we need to spend some money and we haven't actually parked anything. The second question I have is about engineering time and that issue of, and Mr. Pett may not know yet, but it would be good before we're all done to know whether or not you need any more resources or we need to vote you some resources. You may say we're good, or you might say actually there's a lot more stuff here has to happen. I was feeling pretty good the other night when we heard from Mr. Hurley where we were, but I know there's been a lot of stress and strain about the dollars in the sense in terms of your ability to manage with what we have.
Okay.
So I want to make sure we have the money if you need it. I'm also respecting what we heard from the public tonight and what we know, which is that we don't want to have such a large tax increase as we have today. So,
Councillor Shukin.
Sorry. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's sounding a lot like this item needs, more committee discussion, more public consultation, and then, it doesn't stop us from halfway through the year coming back with a non-budgeted item request. So,
yeah.
If I could, what I think it needs now actually is a professional touch, because we actually went through 6 months of public input into this, and I think what we need now is, again, to understand the feasibility of the feasibility of the recommendations, and then after that, I think we'll take another step in terms of engaging the public. But if I could, I would like to ask Mr. Payette to talk with our planner to see what is maybe necessary to kind of do that feasibility work, because I really believe that now we do need help with this. The group has done all it can. I think public has actually done all it can right now, even though there are more ideas, but we don't have time, I think, I think, yeah, we need that professional look. Okay, say it one more time. So, thank you.
Okay, got it.
And I'm not sure if you're aware, but we do get, we do receive some revenue from the arrangement we have with the land swap, 7% tax.
Yeah.
And we did explore the idea of creating a reserve for the buffer land in the future as well. So that could be a place to start. Councillor Gray?
And if I could, I just jump back to our previous sheet. I realized I forgot to ask about the roadside trails. We did have a question from the public. What is the $5,000 increase for? And you may not know today, so I'm not asking immediately, but if we could just get it clear, is that a particular trail, or is it just that all trails need more work?
I don't have exactly the answer to that.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, but if we could find out, it would be useful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at recreation and culture for everybody. Oh, can I go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Recreation and culture services. This is another big expense, but obviously the 90% of it here is requisition taxes, which is, obviously money well spent, that we have all these services available to us in locations that are managed from CRB. So other than that, basically all the smaller expenses I believe are correct.
Any comments from committee on this page? No? Okay.
Okay.
School site?
Getting there. So the school site, I'll go ahead then and just launch into my thinking so far on this fabulous facility that we're embarking upon. Council, when I arrived here day one, I had requested that we open that facility for business on February the 1st. So here you go. So to get to that point, and as the residents have indicated, to manage it, it would be amazing if we had a full-time position to manage this building, because the recreation centers notoriously require staff to meet all the expectations of the users. However, we don't have that luxury here yet, but we're going to get there. In the interim, I'll take full responsibility of managing and looking at a business case and bringing all of my experience and knowledge to this project. And it's going to take a bit of time to get it right, but we have set in place a tiger team approach to the management of the facility, where the billing will quite correctly go through the office staff so that we get that right the first time. Invoicing and whatnot. The day-to-day management of the facility, I've separated that out between maintenance and supervision. So the maintenance plan will be the public works and our building codes supervisor. That will do he's now working on an annual, monthly, and weekly maintenance plan, which is critical for any recreation facility if we want to meet our liability and risk management requirements. And so that's in action, and they've got a good start on that. The daily requirement for supervision and the coordination of bookings, I've asked the fire chief to look after that currently, because we have no other option. We need to have eyes on the building 24/7, and that means supervision, site checks, follow-up checks, monitors, signage, risk management signage. Everything you see in every CRD recreation center is professional. I want to be professional, and so that is our plan for getting through the first year, and until I can have a more robust look at a business case, a business plan, and so that's the way I've approached it from a management perspective. So, that being said, I did look at the budget, and it's a rudimentary first kind of kick at the can almost. I believe the numbers look fairly accurate for now. We have worked on a fee structure that council has approved. I am looking at new leases currently, which are looking very promising. And also there's some initiatives with some community groups that maybe we can wedge in as well. So very exciting. And I hope that, the first few months go smoothly and we have no injuries. And let's hope for the best. Thanks.
Any questions, Nick? Councillor.
I just had one. I just wondered about the school contracted services. If you could, through the chair, is that a leasing agent, or is that, I wasn't sure what that was?
That's exactly. So leasing agents, any professional help we need, we would allocate it to that, so that we're not taking money from other budgets. We're going to allocate the cost to this building. We wouldn't want to start to get a history on the costs, so that we can budget appropriately in the next year.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So is that's all the spreadsheets. Any comments from the committee? We feel comfortable with where we're at right now? The next budget meeting will be on capital. Seeing no hands raised here, the next part of the agenda is an opportunity for public input. Did you have a comment, Councillor Ray, first?
Yeah, just to get clear, so we've done this today. There's a lot of new information, obviously, so thank you very much, Mr. Pett, for going through and finding those efficiencies with staff. But the question I'll have, as soon as that we can run the numbers is what's it look like? So even though the next meeting's capital, if we could get an update as soon as it's available to share with the public in an agenda package, that would be a big help. And I do recognize you had some other, this is lots to have gone through. Well done. But you had some other things at the beginning you're still working on. So, but as soon as we get a sense of where we're at, I think it would be a big help for all of us just to understand, are we still at 15? Are we at 14? Where are we at? Thank you very much, because maybe some of the questions I raised earlier become more pertinent if we still have a large number.
Okay, so open up to the floor. Please step up to the mic with your name and your street.
Thank you. It's getting late, so I will be brief. Thanks for your time. I know it can't be an easy task. I do support the fire chief on the overnight stays. It makes perfect sense to me on a response time point of view, coming from that line of work. I did touch on some janitorial stuff, and certainly if those folks, I'm not sure if they get paid or their expertise of maybe pushing a mop around the fire hall after the day staff is gone, but certainly that bill of $9,600, if that could be whittled down a bit. And also to our new CAO, welcome, but also I think something happened in the last 18 months with regard to our cross-training. And I always thought, as it was mentioned here earlier by the fire chief, that we're leading edge when we have a small community and our works crew folks can help out with staffing. Certainly they might not be on scene right away, but we have other trucks and apparatus that could follow up. So I'm not sure if there's the opportunity with our current staff, whether they'd be interested in doing some part-time work or get trained in maybe some operations in the fire department. But certainly by losing those two folks in the last 18 months or so has got us to a point now where we're having to hire staff. So certainly I think maybe work with the fire chief in future, because I think that was a really important foundation for our firefighters and our fire chief to do our job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. Dave Saunders, 813 Paris Road. So just a few comments, I'll be brief. So I'm working on a doctor, nurse, and emergency support plan for the province. And what came to light in that work with emergency personnel is that the ambulance service is being underfunded. So I've been working with Mayor Kobayashi and Megan McMath of Souk, who also dispatches as well. And there's clear indication that we are undertaking ambulance service. So are we a fire service or are we an ambulance service? And I think that that needs to be correlated with respect to a report from your fire chief to mayor and council, because it was mentioned tonight that most of our calls are medical. So we are now taking up that downloading of a provincial service that is basically not running efficiently or properly in relation to those medical call-outs. So I think there's an obligation for us to look at that in earnest and also maybe approach the province to fund one of these FTEs. Secondly, I'd like to understand, it's easy for me, how much money does it take for 1% tax increase? Is it like 30K or 50K or?
35.
Sorry?
35,000.
35, okay, thanks. And so, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm working with Parksville as well right now on a short-term rental accommodation act that just got adopted in the fall. And I don't know if you realize that Metchosin is part of that act and that you won't be allowed short-term rentals any further. So I'm not sure within your budget if you're allowing for bylaw to enforce this, or if it's been made clear from the province if we are enforcing it as a municipality or they are enforcing it. And I think that's a very important question. So again, thank you for your time tonight. I know it's not easy or fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Stephanie Longstaff, Paris Road. I can't, the other two gentlemen who spoke before me spoke eloquently. For those of you who are unaware, I worked on the roads of Metchosin for about 7 years under the contractor, not under QP. And I have so many questions about that budgeting part, about what's contracted and what's done by the guys that are already there, because it looks like there's stuff going back and forth and it can get really confusing. So I'd like an opportunity to speak to you at some point, sir, about what is contracted and what isn't, because it looks like you got $500,000 in there and about $350,000 of it is being done by our roads department already. So I'm confused on that. I also don't understand why we have $10,000 for crossing guards. Is that for Hens Helgeson?
It is, yes.
Marilyn, would you like to comment on how we came to that?
Yeah, that is for Hens Helgeson.
Okay, having been on the Hens Helgeson PAC for many years, getting the school zones changed, times changed, and having run the crossing guards for the district of Souk, I believe, and I've stated this before privately, that this Metchosin school, the Metchosin municipality needs to force the school district to provide parking. It's not a road issue, it's a parking issue. They're on 12, 15 acres of land. They can move a playground and make more parking. I understand the population of the school has gotten bigger since I went there, so the school district needs to provide parking. It's just that simple. The municipality shouldn't be putting out money for a crossing guard when it's a parking problem. It's not like Colwood where we have traffic issues. It's a parking problem. There's other things, but I'll make a meeting with you sometime to chat about them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric White, Metchosin Road. I'm curious about the FOIs and how that works. So every time a community member puts in an FOI, the municipality gets a bill for it. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's basically correct. Through the chair, the FOI application would come in. There's a small fee for it. We have a small contract in place with a company that helps us crank out the information that's required in the request for the FOI. Staff tabulate and collate information. It takes a lot of time. We send it off for review by the company to make sure that we're not giving out information that's inappropriate. And honestly, every FOI takes time, money, and attention.
Would you be able to give me an average on what the cost for an FOI is?
Not really. I mean, they can go as high as $20,000 and as low as $400 just for the application.
400 is the lowest kind of thing.
Just a fee, and if the request is for something that has a non-disclosure agreement, then that's fairly straightforward. But if it's not a non-disclosure agreement, it goes through the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Pyatt.
You bet.
Arroyo, Winfall Road. On the school, can you tell me if the problems of the toilet septic have been dealt with? Is the school ready to go?
You can answer that, I don't have that information.
Yeah, it's just because it's happening in real time, so thanks for the question, and we have had someone in today to work on the septic system and the pipes, and I believe we're good to go.
Oh, okay, so work's done.
It's almost done, but it's looking good.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Jennifer Burgess, Duke Road. Oh, it's getting late, and you're really going to go into a full detailed discussion of the Growing Communities Reserve Fund this evening. I think that's a lot to put on you after the discussion you've just been through, but I want to point out that there are 15 items under the Growing Communities Reserve Fund, and at the table with the budget discussions, I'm hearing bits and pieces being chipped off of that fund. Now, it's a rather major, sizable fund, and I know you haven't got up to chipping big pieces off it yet. First of all, I would encourage you to think about the larger pieces that you want to put it on and find other ways to manage some of the costs that you are talking about in the 10 and 20K range. Which I don't think the fund is designated for, frankly. I do see there is a section for the non-capital admin costs that you're talking about, so that's probably a likely use. That's way down in the 16th category. What I'm most concerned about is that it is such a large grant that there should be an opportunity for public to address this sum of money. This is a very large piece of dollars just being handed over to municipality. So I would encourage you to think of a process where more of the public could provide some input into those 15 lines that are in the fund. Thank you.
Say it.
Yeah.
Mrs. Burgess.
I'll wait till she gets down. I just wanted to comment a little bit about the community growing fund bylaw. I think is what you read, and I kind of anticipated this question because I too find it a little bit interesting that they've named the community building fund is a one-off grant that we received for $2.4 million, and so we have that in reserve. Okay. Our gas tax funding, it's now called capital projects funding. It's almost the same terminology. And so the capital projects annual grant that we get is the funding we're using for a lot of the smaller items. And honestly, like the community building fund, we haven't really talked about best use for that. And you're right, that would be something we would take to the public, through public review on any major projects. And so I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
I'll wait for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? So that brings us to the Growing Communities Fund discussion. Do we wish to continue on, committee, or should we consider a different time? It's now 20 to 7. Councillor.
I was going to say, isn't our job tonight just to establish this bylaw?
No.
We've already established it.
Yeah, that's last meeting. I wanted to send one.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
I would be okay, I mean, I think we recognize the fund's there, and I would be okay if we pick it up at another meeting. But what I would be interested in doing, sort of knowing it's coming to a meeting, is that we I don't know, do some thinking individually or however we might, to put forward some ideas under, what ideas we might have. And then I think Mr. Pratt and Leslie is correct. It does lend itself to some wider discussions, and so talking about the process would be good. So one was throw down some ideas just so we've got them, in a package a little bit so we can talk about them, but then go wider. And maybe the process is the most important thing.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because I actually prepared before I came here, and I started, I'm going to do my homework, so I started putting together a list, because that's what I thought we were actually going to do here. But if we want to put it off to a different time, that's fine. My list isn't small, but of course I'm relying on my colleagues to help brainstorm that. So we certainly can do that. If everybody's okay with that? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so we'll go on to Councillor's update. So just briefly, as you may have noticed, there hasn't been a finance meeting for the last two rounds. So I asked for this to be put on the agenda because I am doing lots of other stuff out there, but the budget is taking a great deal of the time for all of us. So the first thing I report on here is the operating budget, which is coming to a close in that the deliberations, not the actual vote. So we could revisit that at some point. That vote will be in April. And the Growing Communities Fund, of course, I've commented already on that. We have a schedule. The next meeting will be February 22nd. And we'll be talking about the reviewing the capital budget and some one-times possibly. As far as my agriculture portfolio, as Mariel had mentioned in her report the other day, Councillor F and myself and the mayor and 3 other residents actually participated in the CRD stormwater management for rural acreages, which was very interesting. We're going to be implementing some of those ideas in our ag plan and some future presentations. The Farmer to Farmer Conference, which is a new and young group of people, the Southern, I think they call it South Island Farmers Institute. Their conference is next week. The chief will be doing a talk on Fire Smart. I'll be doing a plenary on our ag plan. The ag plan is in its draft stages. We will be having an open house for farmers on a week Friday, I think it's the 16th. In the afternoon. Also have arranged for Gord Baird, a councillor from the Highlands, also the chair of both the CRD Water Board and the Wanaka Water Commission, to come and speak to our residents about all things water. He did something similar last summer for the Highlands, and so he'll be doing that specific for the chosen residents on the 28th. AVIC concert, not conference, it's not a concert. Conference, which is in April for 3 days. When it is in Victoria this year, which is great for us as far as travel and accommodation. We'll be able to take the bus down there, downtown, and commute in that regard. They were looking for things like sponsors and money and stuff like that. And of course, we have none. We have no money. So I always say that. I don't know if that's totally true, but that's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. So I said to the mayor when we were at UBCM and heard about this that we need to showcase what we do have, and what we have is agriculture. So I've been working with one of the organizers and the chair of our advisory committee, Robin Sunnecliff, and so after a lot of going back and forth and almost it being right off the table, we are going to be showcased, and we will be part of the ag tour for the AVIC, and so they'll be bussing out a contingent of people to Macho's and Brighton early on the Friday morning at 8:30 to visit 2 of our farms. There were going to be more, but time was tight. So they'll be visiting Sea Bluff Farm and Still Meadow Farm, just because they're next door to each other and we can have walking. Plus we can do some form of small lunch before they head back to opening ceremonies. So I'm really proud of that and pleased that Machosen will be on the map for the island and the coastal communities. Sat in a 3-hour meeting with the BC Agriculture Advisory Committee on Tuesday morning. Really felt like we, and no pun intended, but we were small potatoes at 5,000 people compared to Chilliwack and Abbotsford and the Caribou and all these very, very large communities. But a lot of great information, well represented by various levels of the ministry. Some of the ministry representatives will be here at our agricultural forums coming up on the 16th, so I'm excited to see them hit the earth here. West Shore Parks and Recreation, which is where I was supposed to be this evening. I've missed the last 2 meetings because of budget, but that's okay. The pickleball courts have been put on hold till later this year. There's still some negotiations going on with the tennis courts. I've been approached by a former politician of Metchosin, actually, when I was at EBCM, and again the other day we met, is involved with the Victoria Tennis Club, and so they're wanting to take up roots at the West Shore and was wanting to know, do they do partnerships? I said, absolutely, we do partnerships. So I met with CAO Grant Brown yesterday to talk about that. Very promising for that group to be a part of the West Shore, and it'll just be all around. It's basically right now just a drop-in, and they'll do some classes there, but it'll be, if we can get a tenant like this group, then it will be able to be scheduled and used and maintained somewhat. And the fact that we're in negotiations with Tennis Canada, which is a coverall kind of company, it will be a year-round opportunity for us to be able to use that facility more. So that's the exciting stuff coming out of West Shore. As you may have heard, the library no longer has fines. However, if you misplace a book for any period of time, there is I believe there's a cost charge of $40 for that. And they have great digital library circulation. I was there on the weekend with my daughter and updated my very outdated card, and I thought there was going to be a big to-do, and there wasn't. It was just gave them my number and that was it. It was deflating, but anyway, so we walked through and I showed her all the things that we're doing in the library system. So, and the Wanapeka Library, of course, is open on Sundays. There's more and more of the libraries are opening on Sundays again, so that's great. Some community engagement that I've been involved with is Our Place. We did the luncheon for Christmas. It seems so long ago now, but it really wasn't. Closed night of the year. I won't be joining any of you or the mayor in Souk this year. I'll be staying in the West Shore to join up with IACTI, who has a team called the Barrier Busters. So the closed night of the year is it's all over. It's not just in these different regions. It's everywhere. So where anybody could take a torch and get out there and do some fundraising and join up with some really fun people. It's a great organization. I had a good time last year doing it. I think last year I managed to get $875. The chief beat me. She had many more donations. But nevertheless, and of course there's the Wounded Warriors. Even though we couldn't provide them with any funds, they do take donations. I pushed that out on Facebook today, so if anyone's inclined to do that, feel free to at any point in time. That's ongoing. So I think it was 8 runners, 8 days, 800 kilometers from one end of the island to the other in a relay. It's quite interesting. Only one is a firefighter from Qualicum. The others are military personnel and a few police officers. And that's a very interesting website, well worth reading the bios and things that they're doing. And our fire department is helping with escorting. They did a liftoff in Souk just on the 4th, so just a few days ago. Okay, so that is all I have. So moving on to correspondence, we do have some pinks. One of the ones that we have, first we have Bonnie Boober's letter. She had several questions, and I think most of these things have been answered. And different points similar to what we had in public participation. And Ms. Bacon also, so I thank you for those comments. And Mrs. Ballard also has raised a reminder to me to bring forward a couple of her items of the last time she mentioned. So if you bear with me, I'll just quickly go through the notes that I made. So she had comments about, some of them I won't comment on because we've already addressed them, both last meeting and this meeting, but the budget item for travel conferences for council, we all know now that that has been reduced, so that has been answered. Another one that she had was to do with council other business. And those were things like sandwiches for our meetings, some onboarding that we had done through the beginning of the year, meet and greet with, I think we had an extensive meeting with RCMP and the provincial police. Can't remember if we have refreshments there. I think we did because that was quite a long meeting. So that's kind of where those sorts of things do. It's definitely not catered dinners. It's either pizza or sandwiches, and leftovers are usually left for the staff, and there are always leftovers. So, you know, those funds, again, like everything in the budget, it sort of overlaps and is shared. Legal fees, we've already deliberated on that extensively again tonight. And there were some line items, 20,000 for one line item, 22,000 for 5 lines. The reduction that she's referring here from the 42,000, it's a 1% reduction if we're to do that. So approximately 1% for every $35,000. Doggy Do, we already dealt with that. Yeah, and some other suggestions she makes where there's significant decrease in reductions, and in others not so much. So again, as we know, we're still working through a lot of these sorts of things where there's a 0.5% or up to 2%. We'll see that soon, and hopefully after tonight, go back to our accountant and all the work that CAO has done to bring us forward to a different level here, a different perspective. And the input from council has been great, so I really appreciate the patience and the time that everyone is putting into this. What else has she talked about here? Council meetings. Oh, querying the in-cameras. I just want to say with the in-cameras, I feel like that's kind of out of my reach. That is something that staff usually organizes for us. And when I've looked at our schedule, the in-cameras, with the exception of a few maybe, are usually only on the council meeting night. I think we had one recently that was a very brief one before a committee meeting, but and they're not things that we can talk about. There is quite a bit that's rise and report, but you know, there's bylaw, safety, you know, just respecting the confidentiality, and that is what we are doing. We are transparent, but we are being very mindful of. I mean, I have lots of other places I like to be too, but I have committed to this, and I will be here when I'm asked to be here. So I don't think that it's willy-nilly. We're just having endless meetings for the sake of having meetings.
And we don't always get pizza at in-camera meetings.
No, we do not. We do not. The first few meetings, I thought I'd have to start bringing my lunch in a bag, and then someone says, "No, actually, we have sandwiches for you." I was like, "Okay, well, that's good," because witching hour on the farm is, you know, it's 5 o'clock, and if I'm having to be here at 4 o'clock, it's difficult to manage. And thankfully, I have a spouse that supports that part of my duties at home, so I'm grateful for that. Okay, does anybody have any other comments from the committee? If not, I'll ask for an adjournment.
So moved. Adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Ebb. All in favor? Carried. Thank you so much for your patience and your time.